This is the story of Lautaro, the slave who rose to become a general, the general who dared defy an empire, and whose courage forever changed the course of history. It was 1546. A young Mapuche boy named Lautaro watched helplessly as Spanish conquistadors stormed his village. In the chaos, soldiers grabbed him, dragging the terrified youth away from everything he'd ever known. He saw his parents beaten before his eyes, begging for their lives. As he was dragged away, Lautaro swore one day he would avenge his parents. Forced into slavery, Lautaro became a stable boy for Pedro de Valdivia, the ruthless Spanish governor of Chile. Lautaro grew to despise Valdivia after witnessing his cruelty firsthand. One evening, during a lavish gathering, Lautaro saw Valdivia brutally beat a Mapuche servant for accidentally spilling wine. The image of his people's suffering burned into Lautaro's memory, fueling a deep hatred towards the governor. Despite his dire circumstances, Lautaro quickly grasped something crucial. Knowledge was power. This realization struck him profoundly one afternoon when he saw Spanish boys shouting warnings to a Mapuche stable hand who was improperly securing a horse's saddle. Unable to understand their instructions, the stable hand stepped back just as the horse bolted, injuring him severely. The Spaniards laughed mercilessly, blaming the servant for his ignorance. In that instant, Lautaro resolved never to be powerless again. With quiet determination, he listened intently to every word spoken around him, repeating Spanish phrases softly under his breath each night until the foreign language became his own. Lautaro observed closely, studying the Spaniards' tactics during drills and battles. As he absorbed these strategies, it dawned on him how primitive and ineffective his people's own fighting methods had been by comparison. He memorized the Spanish formations, noted their weaknesses, and envisioned precisely how these lessons could one day free his people. Even the conquistadors began noticing his sharp mind, though none suspected the revolutionary thoughts forming behind his watchful eyes. Then one mist-covered, moonless night in 1550, Lautaro seized his moment. Under the cover of darkness and fog, he evaded the guards, slipping silently into the dense forests that had once been his childhood refuge. Racing towards freedom, Lautaro disappeared into the mist, embracing his destiny and leaving his life of captivity behind forever. Rejoining the Mapuche, Lautaro brought more than his courage. He brought knowledge. His people quickly recognized this young man's extraordinary value. Lautaro didn't just join the resistance, he galvanized it, rising swiftly to command. In 1553, Lautaro stunned the Spanish at the Battle of Tukapel. Utilizing guerrilla tactics he'd learned from observing his captors, Lautaro set cunning traps and ambushes, luring Valdivia's forces into the dense forest terrain. His warriors feigned retreat, baiting the Spaniards deeper into a concealed valley. Suddenly, Mapuche fighters erupted from their hiding spots, encircling and overwhelming the Spanish troops. Amid the furious battle, Valdivia himself was isolated and captured. Face to face with the man who had once enslaved him, Lautaro ensured Valdivia saw the face of Mapuche resistance before meeting his end. A profound and symbolic victory that rattled the Spanish Empire. Victory followed victory as Lautaro's reputation grew. He was not merely a warrior, but a tactical genius, guiding his fighters to triumph after triumph. Towns fell to the Mapuche, Spanish forts burned, and hope surged among indigenous peoples desperate for freedom. After years of relentless struggle, Lautaro realized that mere survival was no longer enough. True peace required striking directly at the heart of Spanish power. He resolved to launch an assault on Santiago, the fortified center of Spanish control in Chile. Lautaro understood deeply that the odds were nearly impossible, and many of his closest advisors warned against such a dangerous and ambitious attack. Yet, haunted by memories of a time when his people lived freely on their ancestral lands, Lautaro's resolve only strengthened. Driven by an unshakable commitment to freedom, he marched boldly toward Santiago. On a mist-covered morning, as Lautaro prepared his warriors to move closer to Santiago, an informant, a Mapuche captive secretly working for the Spanish, quietly slipped away, giving the Spanish Lautaro's location. Betrayed by his own, Spanish troops swiftly surrounded the Mapuche camp. Ambushed and hopelessly outnumbered, Lautaro fought valiantly, rallying his warriors in a fierce and desperate stand. But the odds were insurmountable, and after a heroic struggle, Lautaro fell in battle. His dreams of liberation tragically ending at just 23 years of age. But Lautaro's story didn't end with his death. His courage lived on, echoing through generations. His name became synonymous with resistance, bravery, and the unwavering spirit of freedom.